And I think what he means to me is just it's just an inspiration of how do I contribute to the world and to society, and how do I treat people in the way that he treats others? How do I look at people with an open eye in the way that he does? I think he's an inspiration for me, just from a human perspective.
Camille, it is a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Happy to be here, and it's very nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you as well. Um, Camille, this is such a wonderful film. It really is from start to finish, and it gives such a testament to Stan and his legacy. How did the film begin?
Yeah, it's I think that when we as a company kind of set out to find stories and what we want to do and the things we want to tell, I came across this book called Some People Think I'm a Shoe. It's a coffee table book that Stan did. And I think it just resonated with me because I'm a huge tennis fan, and I'm also a big sneaker fan in a lot of ways. And I just think that it embodied so much of what our company stood for in terms of being more than an athlete, and just sort of expanding outside of just sport and touch culture in such a huge way. And so I had the esteemed privilege of being able to get on the phone with Stan via a friend of mine who connected us. And I told him how much I wanted to tell his story and if he would partner with Spring Hill Uninterrupted to bring it to life. And he obliged, and we brought Danny on as our incredible filmmaker. And here we are with this final product.
It really is great, and like I said, tells such a wonderful story. His life is incredible. Um, to you, who is Stan Smith? I mean, we know he's a tennis player and a shoe, but who is he to you? You've spent so much time with him.
I think that what Stan means to me and who he is to me, I think is just an incredible human being. I think when I met him, I didn't realize who he really is. And I think now as you start to peel back the layers and you learn about him, there's a reason why, Margie's been with him for so long. There's a reason why Arthur was such a big part of his life for so long. There's a reason why Mark has took to him and named his son after him. I mean, there's so many, he's impacted so many people. And then even today, he's still coaching tennis in Hilton Head Island and doing his thing. And I think what he means to me is just it's just an inspiration of how do I contribute to the world and to society, and how do I treat people in the way that he treats others? How do I look at people with an open eye in the way that he does? I think he's an inspiration for me, just from a human perspective, not nothing to do with his athleticism, but his impact on the world has inspired me and makes me think about who I am.
That's one of the things I think is most amazing about this documentary is it really brings to life him. He's in the midst of these incredible game-changing, no pun intended, world events, and he seems just to be Stan through the midst of it. His character seems to be really, or he has a strong character through the midst of it.
Yeah, I mean his shoe deal with Adidas, with his agent, Donald Dell, who was in the film, was on a handshake. And to this day, it's still on a handshake. And I don't know very many people who would do something like that and honor it in that way on both sides. It shows what kind of person Donald is, and it shows their relationship. But it really comes to it in the end, it's Stan. And so it's a beautiful uh take on who he is. And I think that's my hope for people who watch this film, is that you're either brought in because you know the issue, you're brought in or because you know Stan, the tennis player, but you leave learning who Stan is as the human.
He must be great because that's the most trust I've ever seen in an agent in ever, or an agent for a client. It's incredible. Uh,
Yeah,
one of the
pretty
things I think,
amazing.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's pretty amazing. When Donald and Stan told us that story, I was just like blown away.
One of the things that sort of comes up through this film too is the power of tennis, which is something I'm not a tennis guy. I've played, I enjoy it, but the power of tennis as a method for inspiring change. I was wondering how you felt about that, and what surprised you most.
I think people take for granted where we are with sport today and forget the history of how it began and how we got here. Rafa Nadal and Serena Williams can earn the money that they're earning now because of the people that came before them, and they all honor that and they all have such respect for it. I think early in my career, I was able to do a film on Billie Jean King, who to me has a lot of um, similar parallels with Stan in terms of the tennis, the time period that they came up. Billy was instrumental in starting the WTA, Stan with the ATP. Billy, when she first started, could not make money as a tennis player because it didn't exist. Amateur tennis was the only thing people could do. Pro tennis wasn't even a thing. And so I think when we see it in this type of format where we see where Stan was in the 60s and 70s, really at the forefront of changing professional tennis and forming professional tennis, it's an honor to be able to tell the story. And I think it's important for people who are watching it to have respect for those that really paved the way.
And with that in mind, the film spends a great deal of time talking about Arthur, and Stan's relationship with him. And I know the film talks about it a little bit, but I'd love to hear from your perspective how you saw Arthur's relationship changed Stan.
I don't know that Arthur's relationship changed Stan. I think it gave Stan an opportunity to do something that was always in him, is to stand by a friend, to not waver through his convictions of what was right and wrong. And I think that I think Arthur obviously is a mega icon in our society for everything he did, for all the barriers he broke, for all the things he did. And Stan will never say, we're not trying to put them in the same category. We're not trying to say that Arthur was able to do these things because Stan did these things. That's not the case here. But I think what we see is that Stan honored his convictions. You see who he was as a person. And that's always been my biggest takeaway with him, is that he knows and knew right from wrong in a time where people of his privilege couldn't necessarily identify that.
Yeah, there's these conversations as they're on tour together about, Stan said that. I think there's moments where Stan says, well, we got to see it in action, shall we say, see what Arthur had to go through, right in front of him all the time. But I mean, and even more than that, like this is incredible, just how it sort of takes him around the world. I mean, the story with Vietnam and going there and having his eyes open, like, um, to him, whereas what his doorway was tennis, he really got to see, and we see in the film, how the problems going on around the world, as well. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think with what we do here at Uninterrupted and Spring Hill, and being able to tell athlete stories and look through the athlete's eyes, that's one of our chairman with LeBron James and Maverick Carter's sort of testament is to say that, hey, we're more than athletes. And there's a reason. It offers them the opportunity to play a game that they love. But it's so much more than that. The things that they see, the things that they learn, the things that are part of them outside of the game, and all of that. And I think with Stan, tennis was the gateway to do all of these things. But I think that there are certain people who are provided the gifts because they have so much more. And I think we as a society are like better for the fact that Stan was great at tennis because it gave him the platform to elevate things that mattered outside of the sport.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, well, with that in mind, but a slight juke to the left. Can we talk about the power of a shoe? Uh, because It's such an interesting story here about how, how this began, how they, certainly they signed him. And to this day, pop culture has absorbed the Stan Smith shoe through Adidas. What sort of impact has that relationship had on him and on pop culture in your mind?
Well, I think that one of the reasons why this film or wanting to do this story was the fact that there are so many people who have worn Stan Smith sneakers and had no idea that there was a person behind the shoe. My colleague and executive producer on the film, Phil Byron, he'll tell you, and he told Stan, he didn't even know he was a person. He thought that Stan Smith was like some designer at Adidas. And so I think the shoe, for whatever reason, it's as Pharrell likes to say, it was just like this very simple, sleek design. Um, and it became this symbol across so many lanes, whether it was sport or music or culture, in fashion, in art. And it you could be anybody and wear it. I think its price point was always accessible to a lot of different people. And um, I just think that its look and feel is what has made it so popular. And I think in pop culture, when you have the president of the United States and you have Madonna and David Bowie and Run DMC, and well, Run DMC were the Shell Tops, but in terms of just like bringing that shoe to the forefront, is why it's like hit. And I think what's fun about it is that if you have only worn the shoe and didn't know who Stan is and now can learn who he is, I think it makes the shoe even more interesting.
Absolutely. It adds such an incredible story to your footwear. It's like, and his face is on the shoe.
Tongue, it's incredible,
I
yeah.
love that the line where it says, even Jordan doesn't have his face on his shoe, and it's true. It's
Yeah,
true.
Carrie nailed it with that line. And it's true when you really think about it. A lot of athletes have had signature shoes. There's very few that have transcended sport, Michael Jordan being one of them. But for a different reason, everyone knows Michael Jordan and everyone knows that Michael Jordan has a shoe and it's a basketball shoe. People know Stan Smith uh, as just like this very sleek sneaker from Adidas.
That's wild to me. That's wild to me. I know we're starting to run out of time, but just before we go, I was wondering, again, based on your time with him, what do you think Stan would say his legacy is?
Oh, if Stan would say his legacy is his family. It's his children, his grandchildren. And I think that's for all the things that he's stood on and for all the things that he's done. I think that's one of the things he's most proud of.
Absolutely. Um, honestly, Camille, it's a wonderful film and and an amazing story about an incredible guy. So thank you so much for bringing it and sharing with us today. And I wish you the best.
Thanks so much. It was nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. Thanks again.
Take care.
You too.